All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to AWS On Air. Oh, I am hearing myself. That is no bueno. All right, cool. There we go. It's been a long day here at AWS On Air. Again, the official live streaming track here at reInvent 2020. But we've covered a lot of very exciting things. We can go through the ML keynote that we saw earlier this morning. We'll recap some of the content that you may have seen or missed throughout the day. And then we will close things off with what is to come overnight and in the coming days here. My name is Nick Walsh, developer advocate here at AWS. And joining me is my partner in crime, Rob Zhu, also with the same job. So you got two peas in a pod here. Rob, how's your day been?
Yeah, well, it's been exciting. This is the first ever machine learning dedicated keynote for reInvent, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, I didn't know what to expect exactly, but I was pleasantly surprised. Swami is our VP of machine learning, and he took us through so much stuff. That's what this segment is here for, right? We're here to give you the recap because we had the keynote, such an action-packed keynote today. We're going to be spending some time on that. And then, of course, at the end, as Nick said, we'll take you through a preview of the schedule for what's to come next. But let's dive right in, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. So if I had to sort of broadly categorize what we saw in that keynote, there were a few big topics. First of which was how customers are tangibly using AWS AI and machine learning. The second was sort of a broad thought leadership walkthrough of how we see machine learning and AI here at AWS, how our philosophy has developed and what it looks like today for delivering tools for our customers. And then lastly, the thing that we all know and love, the launches, the shiny new devices that everyone can't wait to get their hands on. So I'm going to try and recap really quickly some of the earlier components. That way, Rob, you and I can spend some more time on the launches, which are some of the things that are most timely right now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Wonderful. So, this is something we've been talking about a bit here at AWS, but I think, again, in this being our first ML dedicated keynote, this is really starting to come into its own. And it's this 3-tier stack to the approach to AI and machine learning services. This is our approach to being able to meet developers where they are, because we find that both due to how we can build services atop other services, but also where developers are in their AI and ML journeys, this seems to be a pretty good approach. That being first on the bottom, these foundational services, the foundational infrastructure, and making it as performant and cost effective as possible. So think your EC2 instances with the latest GPUs to optimize training. Think some of the custom silicon and the custom chips that AWS is developing with Annapurna Labs. We saw that in the past with Inferentia. This year, we've seen that with AWS Trainium, again, a training-oriented processor for optimal price-to-performance ratios. We see this in optimizations to frameworks like PyTorch, MXNet, so on and so forth. Again, not everybody will operate directly with these foundational building blocks, but it helps build everything else atop that. I would say the star of the show here is probably SageMaker. This, again, being an opinionated, platformized approach to end-to-end machine learning workflows. No one likes to do undifferentiated heavy lifting, and oftentimes that involves infrastructure and ops management and orchestration. When you want to perform distributed training or you want to perform inference at scale, you simply want to tell a service with a set configuration how to perform that training. You don't have to worry about installing the GPUs, fetching the AMIs, checking up on it, graceful failover. You don't want to manage any of those things. SageMaker does that, and we've seen a lot of launches in the past, but also at reInvent this year that make that end-to-end pipeline a bit more thorough and fleshed out, with a launch quite literally called Amazon SageMaker Pipelines, which we'll cover in just a second. And then here at the top tier, we have the fully managed AI services. Again, sort of turnkey, oftentimes pre-built models, pre-trained models, no training infrastructure maybe at all on your AWS account, with varying degrees of customization to sort of allow customers to have as much of a hands-off approach as possible, but give them some dials where applicable to be able to still deliver there. So that's in 120 seconds, 2 minutes, the AWS AI ML stack there. We've seen a rapid acceleration of feature launches, again, 250 in the last year alone. And with all of these launches, unsurprisingly, there are a large number of customers using it, Rob. I know we saw a lot of customer examples, a lot of use cases, some deep dives with the NFL and Philips Radiology. Any in particular that you wanted to walk through or surface here?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to hit some of those as we go along, but just to highlight the number of customers succeeding across this three-tier stack that you mentioned, there's over 100,000 customers using workloads on from various services across this stack now, and the growth has been pretty staggering. And these are some pretty well-known customers: Domino's, Roche, Cabbage, BMW, F1. And what I find really interesting is the breadth and the variety and the diversity of different use cases that these companies are applying machine learning to. And we'll talk about some of those later on with some of the deeper dives, like you mentioned, the NFL. I think that's a very interesting story that we need to recap here. But Swami also kind of mentioned that what these customers are really doing and what they're looking for is the freedom to invent. And when you apply this concept to AI and ML, what he's really talking about is look at all the speed bumps, right? You like to say that you're not really doing ML unless you have some sort of, you're making predictions in production. And I think that's a very good litmus test. But in order to get there, there's so many hurdles that you need to get through. And a lot of that just kind of involves grunt work, sanitizing data, a lot of work that nobody really wants to do. It's not really the core of your business, right? If you're going to sit down and say, what makes my business special? Why am I competitive? And then you take a look at where you're spending your time, you should focus on the things that are uniquely differentiating for your business, right? And that's really kind of the more intuitive definition of the word we like to throw around, undifferentiated heavy lifting. The inverse of that is, what is differentiated? What makes your business special? Why are you here? What makes you so confident that your business is going to be competitive in the market? And that's what you should really be doubling down on. Everything else should be kind of optimized away, ideally. And obviously that's not 100% possible, but I really like that theme, the freedom to invent. And I really like how SageMaker especially is aligned with that theme.
Exactly. I mentioned the three-tier stack. We're going to get into those tenets that Swami spoke about that enable the freedom to invent. But in consistent form, we've got some prop comedy here with we're joined by Swami. Oh my God. All right. Well, the wall held it up. But regardless, it's still holding. The foundation of the three-tier AI ML stack here on AWS is quite sound. But anyway, we're starting here at the bottom, right? You can see inferential, you can see elastic inference. We've got some EC2 instances over here. Swami's covering them temporarily. And I'm going to point out one of those launches. Actually, hold on. Sorry, it's one little tier up. It's right here in the middle layer. SageMaker Studio. Again, when you want to perform distributed training, you just want it to work, right? You don't want to have to mess around with config, and you don't have to worry about your server falling over like my green screen. That would be a terrible time, right? So one of the most exciting launches here for SageMaker for me was faster distributed training, up to 40% faster. Again, as an on-demand service, you're paying for the compute time that you use and the life of that infrastructure. SageMaker makes it very easy to only for you to not need to provision, spin it up or spin it down. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest bottlenecks is the ability to train models quickly. There's challenges with how linear scale, like the scalability concerns around certain cluster sizes and certain data sets and certain algorithms. And SageMaker tries to abstract a lot of that away. And for anyone who is using SageMaker or is maybe new to the game, you just got 40% faster distributed training times due to some optimizations that AWS engineers have made under the hood for data parallelization and model parallelization to more easily distribute under the hood components across the cluster. So again, I always say my favorite launches are the ones that require no code changes, and 40% cost savings in the form of speed ups here is really great.
Yeah, I mean, and the compounding effects of faster training, cheaper training are really hard to overstate. When you think about it, just think about build times, right? I know that's kind of a more intuitive, shorter cycle time, but it's a huge difference when you have build time that takes a couple seconds versus a build time that takes a minute, right? Because whenever a build time takes a minute, I don't know about you, but I go and get distracted. I go and get a cup of coffee. By the time I come back, I've forgotten what I was doing at all, right? And so similar gains happen across the stack when you're talking about machine learning and training your models. a speed up or a cost reduction just makes the organization and the team and the individual that much more productive, not only because of the raw savings in time, but because of the psychological effect, right? Now you're looking at this job and you're saying, oh yeah, you know what? This is going to be done by the time I get back from my lunch break. Nick, if you want to fix the green screen, I'll cover the next section here.
Yeah, we should.
So one of the other things that Swami mentioned in his keynote is that we want to create the shortest path to success. And what he's talking about here is the end-to-end complexity of the dev process when it comes to machine learning pipelines. When you visualize what that machine learning pipeline looks like at the very beginning, you're talking about data collection, preparation, sanitization. Some people call it data wrangling. And then you're talking about setting up these environments to do the training. You're talking about tuning those models. You're talking about deploying those models into production and then scaling them up or down and then monitoring them for potential drift. And then kind of repeating that entire process over and over again, right? And just think, if you didn't have tools like SageMaker, you would be wasting time and money setting this up in an unreliable way, perhaps in an insecure way even. And then, having to accidentally leaving resources running. Everybody's done that. But just kind of having all of that at the tips of your fingers, having that kind of captain's chair view of everything to do with the pipeline is so powerful.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an analogy here, and you'll have to work with me because this is an improv analogy, much like the improv green screen is. So who knows how well this will go? But the story of the increasing maturity of the tool set here at AWS for end-to-end machine learning is substantial. And to draw an analogy, like I would say that the launch of SageMaker was so foundational in that abstracting away the need to do GPU cluster management and provisioning and decommissioning of infrastructure directly in a framework that handles your algorithm and ingestion of data, that was the plumbing, right? Like you're making a bathroom, let's say, you need the plumbing to run to the bathroom. To do anything on top of that, you need it to make work well. And no matter how good anything is above that, if your plumbing doesn't work well, it's not going to be a good time. Now, we saw launches like SageMaker Studio and SageMaker Autopilot and a lot of incremental improvements to SageMaker, additional algorithms and framework support. And these are the appliances that are built fundamentally on top of that very rock solid plumbing that you use all the time. And what we saw this year in Swami's keynote and some of the announcements that Andy made is like when you're performing machine learning, or you're using this room over and over and over again, you start to realize like, oh yeah, I'd like to have this component or this appliance or this fixture. And it's really like what makes it pleasant to use end to end or consistently. It's not just about using it one time. It's about being able to have a sustainable pipeline that goes, that works over and over and over again, not just your first model, but your 100th and your 1,000th. And we see that in tools like SageMaker Feature Store, which was announced in Andy's keynote. We saw Data Wrangler in Andy's keynote. Today, we saw Amazon SageMaker Clarify available as GA, generally available. Once folks are deploying multiple models, especially over a period of time, concepts like bias in data sets and the model itself and being able to detect the data and model drift. These are issues that are complicated and complex, and you wouldn't want to have to craft your own sync from scratch, right? Especially if it's an undifferentiated sort of value proposition. So seeing this come out to serve those needs for customers that have deployed quite a few models is great. We also see deep profiling for SageMaker Debugger, right? You don't want to have to call your plumber every time the water may not be flowing properly if you have the ability to be able to have introspection into how that's, how your operations are performing for your ML pipeline. You can look at your IOPS, your CPU utilization, memory, GPU, and actually, beyond just having the first level of knowledge, which is awareness, deep profiling for SageMaker Debugger actually gives you recommendations for how to further improve or optimize your ML pipeline. So it's sort of a 1-2 punch that is really empowering people that are going to be using SageMaker to be able to get the most bang for their buck and finish training in the most timely manner possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned the significant the maturity that this brings to our customers. And just to give you a couple of examples of how customers have used these features to successfully improve their workflows. Lyft, the ride sharing service, was able to reduce training time for some of their models from days to hours. Vanguard deployed their workloads up to 20 times faster. We have ADP, the payment processor, and the payroll company. They were able to reduce deployment time from 2 weeks to 1 day. It's a speed up of 14 times. And then we had Jennifer Langston, SVP of Player Health at the NFL. And, she was celebrating the 100th season of NFL. This is a company that's been around, an organization that's been around for a very long time. And, in the last few years, there's been an increased amount of scrutiny, and rightly so, an increased amount of scrutiny on player safety, safer tackling methods, emphasis on equipment safety and standards. And AWS has been a partner with the NFL for this entire journey. We've certainly partnered with them on a whole variety of stats and things like that. But now what we're doing is it feels even more important than before, right? Because now what the NFL is doing is taking AWS and using it to process video data to basically infer every single tackle, every single collision that occurs on the field. So we know the angle, we know the players that were involved, we know the speed, we know the type of collision. We know, and then we know later on, how was the player affected? And she mentioned a stat that was really astounding to me. 24% drop in reported concussions among professional players, and now nearly 100% adoption of the safest standards for helmets. This is incredible, right? I mean, it makes total sense to me that the NFL would prioritize safety, especially now, and we're enabling that at AWS. So this was an extremely cool story to hear Jennifer tell. And then, of course, we have Intuit. This is it's almost impossible to not use Intuit. If you use TurboTax, if you use Mint, and they were one of our first SageMaker customers. And what they were able to do is apply SageMaker to train their models in their customer service, a set of services. And this has collectively saved over 25,000 hours for their customers. And it's cut review time down by an average of 50%. So we're really seeing, I mentioned earlier, we see so many improvements across the board at so many companies, and it's just staggering. It's just really, really staggering, right? If you were to go back in a time machine 3, 4, 5 years, and you told companies that this is what this kind of workflow and this kind of technology could enable, I don't think they'd believe you.
Yeah, I mean, we think in terms of incrementalism, because that's an easy sort of way to frame the upside of certain scenarios and benefits. We rarely can imagine orders of magnitude increases like this, especially when it may not have been done before, right? If machine learnings and these pipelines typically were on the order of weeks and months, that's all everybody knew and has been used to until sort of speed ups like this. And that's why there's certainly no shortage of customers that are singing the praises of services that improve their development life cycles, because one of the most costly resources, infrastructure is expensive, but dev cycles and time like that is in a certain way invaluable. Talk about Moderna, that's able to improve vaccine and drug development cycles from months to days, or on the order of like 50 days, right? We're not just talking financial costs at this point; we're talking actual lives. So immense orders of magnitude speed ups here. I'm going to try and fly through some of these other launches as well. In addition to SageMaker pipelines being a purpose-built CI/CD end-to-end pipeline management tool that uses the likes of Data Wrangler and core SageMaker distributed training and feature store, we also see SageMaker expanding compatibility for edge devices. So again, lots of unique hardware constraints, connectivity constraints around deploying IoT models to the edge from memory, power, compute, etc. But still bringing those into the SageMaker wheelhouse so it can be your one-stop shop for machine learning on AWS. And then I want to sort of just bundle all of these together because I think they have a very common thread here, which is we often talk about bringing compute to where your data can live, and the benefits of that, depending on whether you have latency requirements or data governance requirements. But simply from an empowerment perspective, there are far more folks that are equipped to manage data from sources like databases than there are people that are going to be training models entirely from scratch, or building their own deployment and inference pipelines. And so we see a slew of launches here with that continue on this trend, bringing machine learning to where the data already lives. So we see Aurora ML and Athena ML, but newly Amazon Redshift machine learning, again, performing SQL queries to invoke an ML service that can treat inferred ML properties essentially like they were another column in your data warehouse. This continues with Amazon Neptune ML, so performing cutting edge machine learning training on a graph database, something that's significantly difficult to grok, nonetheless, to be able to manage the infrastructure around. Amazon QuickSight ML Insights and Amazon QuickSight Q, sort of abstracting almost entirely the need to even have SQL queries or this technical syntax, and instead saying we ask questions every day, regardless of job title and role, in plain language, for lack of a better word. What would a product look like that can help to serve answers to these queries? And so we see that in QuickSight ML Insights to generate auto narratives from a dashboard. We see that in QuickSight Q, where you can query in plain language and get complex graphs generated or insights into the data that you're storing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned QuickSight Q and its ability to kind of answer plain language questions. Of course, we have to mention Kendra, another one of our AI services that just kind of scoops up all of your data. Scoop is maybe a bad word, but it integrates with all of your data backends, and it helps answer questions that you would type out in natural language. And these services are really kind of amazing, right? Because if you think about your data, it costs money to store that data. It costs money to kind of keep that data in a retrievable state, to make sure that it's compliant with various policies. And you have to really consider the value that you're getting out of it. And these services, what they're doing is allowing you to derive more insights from that data. And so I think they're incredibly valuable, and it's really cool to see how they've put all these different features together. And they're great examples, right? I think they're very inspiring, because a lot of customers are going to be able to look at these and go, oh, wow, I didn't know that was possible with QuickSight Q. I didn't know that was possible with Kendra. And they themselves are going to be inspired to go and build the next generation of AI and ML powered services.
Exactly. Yeah. And, to that extent, level of hands-on capacity for some of these services is not simply how deep you want to dive into the machine learning code, in the same way that, you are not training Kendra, you're not writing code to train Kendra, you're not writing code to train QuickSight Q or QuickSight ML Insights. Even for a service that may be oriented more directly towards developers through a managed API in Amazon Lookout for Metrics, you can still provide data in which the training and the model selection, the hyperparameter tuning, all of that is completely abstracted away. So the sort of contract for the managed service is you provide arbitrary time series data that's denoted where it has, you provide arbitrary time series data, and Amazon Lookout for Metrics can automatically detect anomalies in that data, and then you can then do downstream alerts. You can trigger custom actions through, let's say, an AWS Lambda function, right? I believe we saw that on AWS What's Next earlier today, where when a given alarm is active, you can then trigger a Lambda function to, let's say, resupply stock or to alert someone that might be on call, sort of pairing together the detection with the alert with the resolution, sort of end to end. So you don't have to then think of a bunch of other services to tag along. Truly, this idea of looking out for a metric in time series and being able to go to resolution is sort of all in one. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and what better way for Swami to close out the keynote than by referencing one of our leadership principles, learn and be curious. And great call out from him. We have all sorts of learning resources. We understand that there are not enough machine learning experts out there in the world today, and we're trying to do our part to make the services a lot more accessible, and B, to make sure that the resources are available to become those experts yourself, whether it be through our training and certification process, some of our massively online open courses on Udacity, edX, and Coursera, and then our educational services such as DeepRacer, DeepLens, and Deep Composer, so that you're learning by doing. And speaking of learn and be curious, Nick, what's in store for us for the rest of the week?
That's a great segue. Let's pull up the handy dandy schedule. So here we are in week 2 of AWS reInvent 2020. It is Tuesday the 8th. We have already had a full day of sessions from AWS What's Next, covering some of these latest launches. We recapped the keynote earlier today. We saw some exciting content through how to partner with some of the partners in our APN network. And coming up immediately after this, we actually have an industry live session talking a bit about manufacturing and all of the services and sort of the state of affairs here in cloud for anyone in the manufacturing space. We saw a lot of launches in the AI/ML area here that serve manufacturing customers. So I'm sure that's going to be a good one again coming up later today. Oh, I missed it actually. Certification quiz show with Mary Law is up immediately after this. Then again, if this is your first time around, we will have some localized recaps in a variety of regions and time zones. So going all the way around, I believe we have Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Italian, German, French, Portuguese, and Spanish between tonight and tomorrow morning, at which point the English track picks right back up here at AWS on air with a variety of sessions, too many to name. But again, we have a single spot where you can go to get all of that content, and it's going to be at this news blog. We'll post a link in Twitch chat so you can get it. You can also follow the @AWS on air Twitter handle, where we'll be tweeting continuously throughout the event. But one thing is for certain, and it is that we will have an action-packed week. There are hardly any unfilled boxes here, which means that if you can find the AWS On Air channel, as you're probably watching here, or you're on Twitch, we'll give you a link to that. This will be your one-stop shop for live content throughout this rest of this week and next.
Yeah, and I also just want to call out that if you missed any content from week 1, all of that is available on demand now on the event platform. So just search for the track or the service or the announcement, and it's going to pop right up. Click through. The video is all on demand, and it's as good the second time as it was the first time. So definitely take the time to explore the platform and find what you need.
All right. Well, we are at time. I can hear the producer whispering in my ear. We have next up the certification quiz show with Mary Law before we close out then with an industry live session in manufacturing. So stick around. We'll be right back in just a minute with more content. But otherwise, Rob and I will see you all tomorrow.